All right, we are starting the ceremony, though, for the 2023 Texas Disc Golf Hall of Fame ceremony. Man, thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. It's pretty cool to think about where we are today. You can see disc golf kind of all over the place. It's just an exciting time when you think about that Bartholomew Park, went in 1982. It is still the longest and oldest disc golf course left in Texas. So, every time you play that, you should feel pretty cool about the history there and the fact that there's a great club surrounding it and supporting it, the redesign, the upkeep, the kind of keeping it in the city's forefront, all pretty amazing things. And when you think about that course being in 1982, currently in Texas, according to UDisc, there are 660 disc golf courses. Texas currently ranks number one for disc golf in the entire nation as far as polling and different statistics goes. Yeah, give yourself a hand. That's all of us, y'all. Pretty amazing. So we're going to kick this ceremony off real quick because we're here at the Capital of Texas Open, and I'd like to introduce, this is the 32nd year, I'd like to introduce the TD for the event and the CEO and co-founder of Mint Discs. Give it up for Zach Jansen real quick.
How's everybody doing tonight? All right. So as he said, this is the 32nd annual Capital of Texas Open. We would not be here without some people that got us to 32 years. So I would like to just bring up, if I remember, we got Mitch and Patty Justice and Dave Moody. They're some of the actual TDs from the past few years. I would like to just have everybody give them a round of applause if we can get them up here. Where are they? They're over there. Okay. All right. So, next we got some special awards we're going to do for Kodo. Who's played the new Roy G disc golf course? Is it pretty good? Okay. So there's 3 people that had a big hand in that. So I'm going to bring up Mike Ulse, if he'll come up here. He's going to talk about some awesome people, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for coming out. I hope everyone had fun today. I'm sure everyone was perfectly happy with their round and didn't walk off the course and complain about a single shot that they threw and didn't tell anyone about their round and was completely happy with everything that happened. I'm kidding. Anyway, hey, I just want to thank, first off, all the volunteers that came out to Colorado River Park. Those are the people that really make it happen. And so many people show up to these volunteers days. I don't know who their names are, but they're wonderful people. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, and also from Matt and Josh. And so, speaking of that, tried to figure out how I was going to describe what these guys mean to a disc golf community. And basically what I came up with is, to me, they're like my heroes, okay? They're like the everyday people, the teacher, the crossing guard, heck, the person that picks up your trash, your recycling, the person that works at the gas station, washes the dishes. Man, they're never going to be famous. They're never going to be a Michael Jordan or make it into the lexicon of the disc golf language for eternity. But they're just as important as the people to win world championships. They're just as important as anyone else, and we will never know their names. But I am very thankful that Zach decided to honor these guys. They are my heroes, Matt Papa and Josh Rippey, and please give them a big round of applause.
I'd say the last 9 months have been a lot of fun, working again with my boys, turning Roy G into a new format, and so I hope everybody enjoys the tweaks of old holes, the design of old holes. So, anyway.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, brother. I was going to say one little thing. More work to be done.
All right, awesome, man. Love those guys. Some of the hardest workers in all of Texas right there. We got an amazing group here of presenters as well, but we also want to recognize some of the folks that have made it into this prestigious group already. In fact, we have 12 members here. I'm going to read off the names. We can kind of hold the applause and actually shout for everybody here in a minute, but I just want to recognize our current Texas Disc Golf Hall of Famers that are here, including someone that's in the World Disc Golf Hall of Fame, Andy Lehman Young, Brian Pizza God, James, Bill Burns, Mitch Justice, Des Redding, Gordon Maxim Kelly, Nolan Grider, David Moody, Jumpin' Joltin' Joel Kelly, Patty Justice, Vinny Miller, and I'm your gracious and MC host, Jay Redding. Right on, right on. Yeah, give it up for all the Texas Hall of Famers there. All right, we're going to go ahead and start here with, we have got 4 inductees this year, and this first inductee is PDJ number 1274, Mr. Don Wilczek. This individual is also in the World Disc Golf Hall of Fame. He is probably still considered maybe the world's greatest hook thumber roller of all time. This guy was ultimate famous, and I got to play with him several times when I first got down here, but a hook thumber is where you take your thumb and put it on the edge of the rim of the disc, and he used to do this with a condor, and you give your full body motion and slam that baby down, and there wasn't a hole in Houston that this guy couldn't hook thumber roll and have success with. But an ultimate competitor, and our presenter is going to tell us all about it. I want to introduce number 2094, who's also number 2 in the Houston Flying Disc Society, going way back, an early pioneer in youth education, also on the Edge Board of Directors, and World Disc Golf Administrator and member. Give it up for Andy Lemon Young. She's going to be introducing Mr. Don Wilczek, who currently lives in Chicago and wishes he still might parachute in at any moment, so watch your skies.
All right. Good evening. Yeah, I'll set y'all straight. HFDS number 1. But if it wouldn't have been for just the huge team that built HFDS, it never would have happened. So anyway, I am super honored to be here this evening and not being the ceremony host. So I'll say that first, but I am super excited to be here to induct one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met. His name is Don Wilczek, and he kind of came out of the woodwork in Houston after a 10-year absence. This guy showed up one day. I'll tell you about that in a minute, but let me tell you a little bit about his early days. Don Wilczek he's from Chicago, and he is back in Chicago now, and he was a guts and just Frisbee player who stumbled onto disc golf in the 1980-81 era, back when there was really no organized disc golf disc golf tour or anything. I don't know how many of you remember what we had back then was kind of called the North American Series. Raise your hand if you remember that. Okay. And he stumbled onto playing disc golf and came out and was mentored by another local guy. And in his first year, he decided to go out on the NAS tour all over the United States. I mean, these guys had to drive from Chicago to California to New York. I mean, we think the people today have it tough driving on tour. These people had to cross the country back and forth back then, and he did it. And the first year that he ever got on the tour and started playing disc golf with Moonlight Flyers before the beveled edge disc. He won the first 6 events that he ever entered. So I would have to say that back in that day, Don Wilczek could be considered probably the best, one of the first world champions of our sport. So he was crossing the country back then. He went back home to Chicago. At this point, he was early into the PDGA, 1274. Then he got married, and he had a child. And he realized that he needed to change his direction. And so he went to work, and he moved. He was a carpenter, really hardworking guy, one of the most humble people you'll ever meet in your life. And like 10 years later, I'd been in Houston for 2 years. I went to the dentist, and my dental hygienist told me that her husband was the parks director in this little bitty town called Missouri City, Texas. And she asked me what I did, and I told her I play this crazy sport. She says, you need to talk to my husband. And so I called him up, and he said, wow, that sounds really cool. And he took me out to a cow pasture, and we started one by one, buying baskets, and one at a time. That's right. And then in 1991, we decided to have this little event, this little tournament at that cow pasture. John Houck came, and Gary Landry came, and and then we're getting ready, and this guy pulls up in this little car, this little, like, pickup truck, and he gets out, and he has all these midnight flyers with him, and we're all looking at each other going like, who are you? Who are you? And his name was Don Wilczek, and he lived in Missouri City, Texas, and he hadn't touched a disc in 10 years. And he saw this little blurb in the paper down there, and so he came to check it out. And the rest of his Houston story is mighty historic. He joined us. He beat the crap out of a bunch of people that day, from what I was told, with his thumber, even though we were in a cow pasture. And went on to just be a part of Houston Flying Disc Society. And I tell you what, he got involved in every aspect of our sport, all the way to PDGA board level. Competitor, still came out with his winning ways. And one day, he was out at Tom Bass Park. I was out there. We would drive miles to just play a 9-hole course. We had 2 of them at that point. And we were talking on hole 14 at Tom Bass Park. And we were talking about that, Texas had a state championships, but it didn't have a disc golf only state championship. And that conversation on hole 14 at Tom Bass Park is where Texas State's disc golf championship was born. And if you go look it up, you'll see that first year, 1996, Don and I both wanted to play, so we asked our good friend Jim Mazzola to be the TD. So we could both play. So I spoke to Don. I had the honor of calling him and telling him about this, and he's just the same old Don. He's just so humbled, and wow, that's so cool. That's wonderful. We talked old times, and there were a couple of things, that I pulled out that other people have said about him over the years, and I wanted to share a couple of those with you. Dave Dunapace of Innova, where Don Wilczek, he says he's a great sport and a fierce competitor. And Jeff Homburg said this. He said, considered the first touring player, as much as you could call it a tour of events back then. And Dave Greenwell, he was the early Climo, and he really was. So after the honor of calling him and telling him, I did say, okay, is there something that you want to share with everyone since you can't be there? And he said, yeah. He said, I want to make sure that you thank the founders of HFDS, because if it wouldn't have been for that group, I never would have found disc golf again. So you guys, this is Don Wilczek.
Nice. Thank you, Don. You're going to see this at some point, man. Rock on, brother. All right, our next inductee is going to take us into the time machine back to the 70s. Whoa. Remember the Frisbee, bro? PDJ number 537, and probably has an IFC number, maybe in the lower, way lower than that. But disc golf came as a discipline, right? As a multitude of other Frisbee activities and sports and different types of throwing and catching and negotiating objects and accuracy and self-caught flight and discathon, disc golf, right? Frisbee golf. So at some point, Frisbee enthusiasts started deciding which one of these maybe sports side games, disciplines that really they really appealed to them. And this is where our next inductee comes in, Tom Wingo. I mean, with a last name like Wingo, you pretty much have Frisbee in your blood already. And our introductory person here, Mr. Vinny Miller, is going to tell us a lot more about this. But I just want to set this up a little bit because Tom was a participant in the 1979 disc golf championship that was held out in Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. And it was a $50,000 disc golf tournament. And if we think about that in today's times with inflation, that's a $220,000 tournament back in 1979. And our inductor is going to tell us about this, number 5521. Welcome up here. He started the Texas Women's Championship 18 years ago with Edman Coffee. He's got 124 professional PDJ wins to his credit. This is Vinny Miller introducing Tom Wingo.
Guys, first and foremost, it's a true pleasure to be here and to see where this all developed and where we've come to with this. It's amazing. And it was a true honor to talk to Tom Wingo. Tom Wingo, for me, again, we kind of have to set this up because a lot of people don't know this guy. And, in the 70s were many years ago. And so some of the young guys, Matt Hall, some of you young guys, may not remember these things. But what I found myself was when I was given this project, and I love writing stuff, and you can see I write, took me down rabbit holes of information and data and websites and stuff. And so I kind of put together a true essay, and I'm going to read it to you guys because I don't want to miss any points on this stuff. But Tom Wingo, first and foremost, he was born in 1952, and he left this world in 2005. So he wasn't, he didn't live a full, long life, but he lived an incredible life. Okay, so while researching Tom, I found myself diving headfirst deep into flying disc golf history rabbit holes. I found myself in a maze of databases, web pages, and hard copy magazines. I was not aware of the different organizations and the Hall of Fames created to recognize our early Frisbee flingers. And that's the truth, guys. It was unbelievable, some of the stuff I was reading. I know everybody's heard about the Frisbee pie pan, but I'm telling you, I'm going to encourage you guys to take this trip with me and go farther with it. I encourage and challenge everyone to check out the International Frisbee Association, the Ultimate Hall of Fame, the Professional Disc Golf Hall of Fame, and a particular website, statemando.com. or statmando.com. And what that is, and everybody's looked up a PDGA's number, and maybe they're not members anymore, and you can't see their stats. As PDGA members, I encourage you guys to go out there to statmando.com, put your name into it. It's gonna blow you away. Okay, some of the fun facts that I came out of the Frisbee history. Plastic flying disc first hit the market in 1948. That was a shock to me. In 1926, at a little elementary in Canada, Ronald Gibson and a group of his elementary school chums, I love the word chums, played a game they called the Tin Lid Golf. Everybody knows about the Frisbee pie pan. That's where we started. You know, in a sense, that's 1926. We're throwing Frisbee pie pans at objects. The IFA, International Frisbee Association newsletter, made its debut in 1968. The first ever judged competitive freestyle competition was in August 18th, 1974. Early on, there were small pockets of flying toy fun all over the country without organized competition. Many of the early enthusiasts got put on Frisbee demonstrations to include music festivals, sporting events, park performing, and world fairs. The fun evolved into competition and included ultimate Frisbee style, ultimate freestyle, guts, and double disc court, and object golf. Now we know as disc golf. Tom Wingo, he received his professional disc golf membership in 1978, 537, as Jay said. This was an early beginning of his long Frisbee resume. He traveled the country involving himself in everything Frisbee, an early pioneer of making a living throwing Frisbees, where he traveled for 17 weeks to the Ace Performance Disc Team with his freestyle partner, Moses Alfaro, which we were hoping to have here tonight, but we weren't able to. He worked hard at his passion to succeed and embody the essence of Frisbee's play. Starting in 1977, his resume included Texas State Disc Golf Champion, followed by repeating it in 1978. Today, Texas State is still going. Also that year, he won the Mississippi State Disc Golf Championships and finished second in the Midwest National Disc Golf Championship. Tom traveled in the famous Whammo $50,000 Frisbee Disc Golf Tournament Invitational in 1979. He finished fifth in disc golf and fourth in distance. He crushed it at 369. Crushed it. If he was traveling, then he found himself at Reschauer Park, which is not a disc golf anymore, in Dallas, mastering his craft. He was part of a grassroots growth of Texas freestyle and disc golf. He is quoted in saying, and this is in 1979, "In organization and ability, Texans have come a long way." That was in 1979. Look where we're at today. I feel we're pretty badasses. He even continued to say, "I expect to see 5 or more Texans in the World Frisbee Disc Golf Championships." I can't say enough. Guys, y'all go into what started us in throwing things, whatever it might have been, ultimate, double disc, whatever it was. Go into some of these stats that I was going into, the sites and stuff. Dig a little bit. It's really cool. And so with that said, man, Tom Wingo now joins us in what I think is probably the best Disc Golf Hall of Fame outside of World and the PDGA. So y'all give it a big round of hand for Tom Wingo.
Nice, man. You don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. And our next inductee here had a major time in the spotlight here in disc golf, right in Texas. He was a raging competitor in the 90s. Very, very fierce competitor. When I first got down here in 2001, his name was mentioned often as like, whoa, these were the guys to beat just a few years ago. Number 4607, I'm talking about Sam Grizzoffi. out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yeah, give it up. This guy was one of the original, like, OG, like, could throw an AVR farther than a football field kind of a thing. Big throws, big putts, ultra competitor. This is somebody that a young Nolan Greider actually really looked up to. Like, man, this guy, I want to be like this someday, man. Can throw far, can make big putts. Didn't quite throw an arrow probably, but yeah. Nolan Greider looked up to you, Dan. It's a good thing. So our inductee also has a rich history in Frisbee into disc golf. I'd like to call up number 581, whose first Frisbee tournament was in 1972. He actually was the PDJ commissioner 1988 through 1990. All the way from Dallas-Fort Worth, give it up for Bill Burns. He's going to introduce 4607 Sam Grzoffi and tell you his story.
All right, so how many out there remember Sam? Let's give it up. I'm going to read you some things from Statmando that Vinny was good enough to forward to me. Just a moment. Got to learn how to work these smartphone thingies. All right. Like he said, Sam Grzoffi, 4607, so that means he joined when I was commissioner, probably 1988. Top 10, 62 times, 73% of his tournaments. Cashed in 78% of his tournaments. And you guys remember a pretty good golfer named Ken Climo? Okay. He was pretty hot back in the 90s and the early 2000s. Well, he won like 12 times in 14 years, kind of something, something like that. But somebody had to come in second to him every year. Well, the first year he won, somebody came into him second place out in Phoenix, and that second place player was Sam Grzoffi. And he also came in the top, I think, sixth place in one of the tournaments down there in Pleasure Island back in the mid-90s. He won his first event at Texas State Disc Golf Championships as an intermediate player in 1987. Played his first pro event in 1988 in Oklahoma. So, and unfortunately in about 2008, he had a brain aneurysm. It was nothing to do with any, bad habits he might have fallen into. That's what the doctor said. It could happen to anybody. And Sam wanted me to tell you that. It had nothing to do with his history. And he's been on the mend ever since. And since I've been in Dallas, he actually, at one point, was able to come out and play when he could still walk decently and have his left arm in a sling. He'd be out there at BB-Owen, throwing his AVRs with his right arm and still, kicking butt for a pretty good player that he was. So I had the honor of telling him that he was inducted to the Disc Golf Hall of Fame here in Texas. He was very excited about it. His mom was probably more excited. But let me share you a couple stories about Sam. I moved to Dallas in 1987. I was there for a 6-month training period for sales. And at the time, really the only course in Dallas proper, and most of Dallas, was in Skyline Park in Dallas. It was 9 holes. It got expanded to 18. And it was put in for the 1982 World Junior Championships. And that was the same tournament that I first played in 1972, but it was national. It wasn't world then. Kind of like Disc Golf Hall of Fame is now world. Everything gets bigger. We're in Texas, so. And I met him there. We called him Sam the Super Am because he was so good, but he was still in high school, so he was not encouraged to go into the pro or open division then. So, and you've heard his history since. If you look it up, you can see a lot of stuff in the late 80s and 90s that he's done. And I'll share 2 quick little stories. Got to be careful, just 2, because you get me in front of the mic. I could be here for a while. We're playing at Audubon Park in Garland, Texas. Before there were even objects. We had even posts. There's pole holes there now, but a long time ago, back in the late 80s, We just played at night around lights we could find in the park. And Sam was so competitive. He did something that just broke my heart and almost made me cry. He was so mad after a shot that he made. He took his patent pending arrow, folded it in half, and folded it in another half, and then threw it in the woods. I don't know, you guys. If you go to eBay and look up a patent pending arrow, they command a pretty good price. And some of us, the second story I'm going to tell real quick, Sam wanted me to share, was why a lot of people call him Sammy Joe. I don't know if some of the old-timers call him Sammy Joe or not, but we do, all of us old Skyline players. He wanted us to let you know it was because he was at a tournament in Oklahoma City. I think it was Woodson Park. And he was like he got there in the morning. He wasn't, he's just warming up and just kind of walking around, wasn't really looking where he was going. And he backed into an open door of a car, and he fell down. And it was the car was R.L. Stiles, who was like old Masters player back in the 80s. I doubt he's still around, but he was a great guy. And Mitch McClellan, who's in the World Disc Golf Hall of Fame, I believe, saw him fall down, laughed at him, and said, Sam, you're as blind as R.L. Stiles' dog, Sammy Joe, who was like a 14-year-old dog. So after he goes, I'm just going to call you Sammy Joe. So that's why he's called Sammy Joe now. So he is really sorry he can't be here. And he gave me some information. If you all are ever in Dallas, he'd love to see, especially all the old-timers. I stop by there when I can. And he just misses y'all. But he said, if anybody wants to sell him a patent pending disc, he'll pay. Don't try to gig him too bad, but if you got one, because it reminds him of the old days. He just doesn't have one because at one time, because of his personal situation, he sold his collection. He feels bad about that. But he goes, I'm more than willing to buy one. They don't have to give it to me. I'm more than willing to buy one. So if any of you would like just to stop by and say hi to Sam, say, I remember you back in the 80s and 90s, man. You were so good. You were so fun. You were so easygoing and carefree. It was just a pleasure to play with you and just to talk with you, man. Well, then you can get with the Texas Disc Golf Hall of Fame, and I can give you his information. He lives like about 2 Nolan throws from the original Skyline course in Northeast Dallas. No, you know what? No, it's only a quarter mile, so it's like 2 Nolan throws. So, that's with an AVR. So, but he like I said, he doesn't get out except go to the doctor. But he keeps up with us through the internet as much as he can. And he just remembers a lot of you guys. He remembers the friendships he had with you back in the 80s and 90s and would love to see you again. And like I said, I'm not going to share it here, but I've got his phone number, and he'd be more than happy to talk with you. So on behalf of Sam Grazafi, he wants to thank you very, very much. He wants to thank the Hall of Fame members for inducting to him and not forgetting about him. That was his main concern. So in place of Sam Grazafi, I want to thank you very much for his induction into the Texas Disc Golf Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Good stuff, good stuff. All right. Our last inductee is actually here in physical presence tonight. Yes. We all know him as Jimbo. Jimbo. One of the first interactions that I ever had with Jimbo was actually pretty funny. Here I was, kind of touring, whatever, superstar, and someone was asking me for my autograph, and I autographed it. And then I looked over, and all of a sudden I see this guy pick up my Mini. And he picked up my Mini, and all of a sudden I see he's got a Sharpie out, and he's drawing on it. I'm kind of like, wait a second, what's up with this? And so then he hands it back to me, and I figure, like, wow, that's kind of funny. He actually probably gave me an autograph, and he actually did, but it wasn't an autograph. I looked down. and in sure Jimbo form, he just wrote Jimbo, but he formed it in an artistical way where the letters filled up the entire mini. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. Like, holy cow, this guy's like has some kind of artistic background or something. He didn't really say anything to me. He just kind of smirked and kind of walked off, and I sat there looking at it going like, wow, that actually was pretty cool. And I got to know Jimbo over the years, and of course, you know, like all of us, man, fell in love with the guy. What's not to like? I mean, he's as OG as Texas disc golf gets. In fact, you know, he's so OG. I kind of asked him. I've been asking people. I was like, hey, so Jimbo, I can't find information. Like, what's your PDGA number? And he's like, well, you know, he goes, I was standing in a field with Brian Huddleston when he had just gotten his number 133. And then he's like, and I had a membership filled out, and I had it folded up and on an envelope, and I even had a stamp on it. But in a true Jimbo nonconformity way, he never sent it in. Keeping Austin weird. I love it. And we're gonna introduce Jimbo here this evening. In fact, introducing Jimbo is a stalwart here in the disc golf scene, number 4863. Been in the leadership form, some form or fashion, since 1988. Introducing Jimbo. This is Gordon Maxim Kelly. Gordo Waterloo.
So I am here to introduce Jimbo Bauman, and as Jay mentioned, and I will mention, that will be the last time I say his last name, because he has always been just Jimbo. And I don't mean like just Jimbo. He's like a one-name star like Pele or Shaq. It's Jimbo, and always has been. So I have known Jimbo for 25 years, but while that seems like a long time, Jimbo has been disking more than twice that long. 1958, he threw his first Pluto platter. Yeah. Jimbo's really known, especially around Austin, as a very prolific disc golf artist, and he really is. He has done every Waterloo Disc Golf Classic stamp from the 3rd in 1980 through the 45th in 2022, and is already working on the stamp for the 46th annual Waterloo Disc Golf Classic here in 2023. Amazing. How do you... I swear it was 20 years ago, and I was still like, how do you keep coming up with original ideas 20 years in? But he does. And instead of slowing down, starting with about the 37th Waterloo, now we're getting 2 stamps, 3, 4 stamps per year out of Jimbo. And by my latest count, I think we've gotten 56 Waterloo Disc Golf Classic stamps out of 43 years of tournaments of Jimbo. And they are beautiful. And they are meaningful. And you look at these stamps, and you can start looking for patterns, looking for meanings. Oh, the 43rd Waterloo? How many feathers are there on that stamp? Oh, look, 43. Like, you know, whatever the number, you start looking for it, and he is built in these connections, these relationships, and this general artistic bent to a disc golf stamp, and it is beautiful. But he's not done just Waterloo stamps. He did one of our club's Young at Heart stamps. He's done some Wells Branch stamps. He did this beautiful disc golf history stamp for someone who did a disc golf display at a 1940 UT basketball tournament. Disc frisbee in 40s at UT, and he did it. So I think between the two of us, we figured probably 70, 75 disc golf stamps might be a good estimate on how much Jimbo has done. It's been amazing. So lots of disc golf stamps. But how many people who've done disc golf stamps have been on a disc golf stamp? If you look back in the Waterloo Classic history at the second Waterloo Disc Golf Classic in 1979, what image do you see? The image of Jimbo on that stamp. It's before he ever started making them, he was on them. So yeah, prolific, you bet. Amazing, you bet. It's just stunning. So, but further back in the 70s, Jimbo actually taught UT informal classes in Frisbee sports, and he had like a series of 7 or 8 classes, and different skills, distance, freestyle, all the different disciplines that were talked about earlier that were part of disc golf back then. With the very last one every year would be golf. And he would take them down to Waterloo Park. And for 7 years, Jimbo did these informal classes. 200 plus students would learn Frisbee from Jimbo, ending with golf down at Waterloo Park. Amazing. So earlier, someone mentioned the Rose Bowl Classics. Jimbo was at 2 of the early Rose Bowl Classics, and he told me a story that has to contain so many stories within this story. 1976 Montreal Olympics. Jimbo goes up there, does the Olympics, hitchhikes from Montreal to LA, where there's going to be the disc golf events at the Rose Bowl. Yeah, 70s, hitchhike, Montreal, LA, no problem. He is almost in LA, walking along when Charles Tips drives by him. Charles Tips is the guy who essentially is known as who brought disc golf to Austin. Charles Tips. Drives by, sees Jimbo, recognizes him, stops and picks him up. And Jimbo ends up filming Charles Tips at the 1976 Rose Bowl event. And this is 76, and we're still 50 years away. So also in 76, Jimbo is at the first Texas State's Flying Disc Overall Championships, and he comes in second in freestyle. And again, why do we talk about freestyle at a disc golf event? Disc Golf Hall of Fame, freestyle? Because back then, all the players did all the disciplines, pretty much, or at least the top players did. Disc golf, guts, distance, freestyle, double disc court, everything. Is a multidisciplinary activity. And MTA, which apparently is maximum time aloft combined with catch your own disc, or stuff I was always horrible at, but apparently a lot of people were really, really good at. So again, second in freestyle at the very first Texas State overall Flying Disc Championships. Backing up 1 year to 1975. Again, think about this. There weren't PDGA events. Even in 88 when I started, you got 5, 6, 7 events scattered throughout the year, and you traveled to them. So in 1975, in the summer, Jimbo is traveling around to some of the hot spots in Austin, affiliates of like the Lone Star Frisbee and close, A&M, Dallas-Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, the places that this stuff went on. And he was in A&M where there was a person known as Roy Pledger, the Frisbee prof of A&M. I mean, big in his day, the kind of person we would now go, oh my God, that is great. So they're doing distance competition at the football practice field in A&M. And Jimbo's throwing, and he's getting 60 yards on distance, 60 yards on distance. No big deal, just 60 yards. And he uncorks a shot for 105 yards. 350 feet with one of these basic, what we would consider basic beginner whammo Frisbees. And Don Pledger saw this and went over and took a picture with Jimbo on his 105-yard shot. And to this day, with all his history, Jimbo said this is still one of his most prized possessions. So all this beginning with Jimbo, all the way back, earlier mentioned Lone Star Frisbee. Jimbo is one of the founding members of Lone Star Frisbee, part of the group that ran this giant freestyle tournament on Auditorium Shores, where they raised a bunch of money and bought the first 9 baskets for Bartholomew. This club bought those 9 baskets. They got the city to match it. And they designed, installed, created what is probably about the 3rd basket course in the state of Texas at Bartholomew, and is now the oldest course that's actually still in the ground. Bartholomew. This was Lone Star Frisbee. This was people like, was mentioned, Brian Huddleston, Jimbo, Chris Baker, all these people who started Lone Star Frisbee, who built the foundations that we all take for granted. Folks like John Houck, myself, many of the people that are in the Disc Golf Hall of Fame, we may have built some of these foundations that you guys are building on. But these are the people who built the foundations that we built upon, that we couldn't have done all this without. Jimbo, Tom Wingo, multiple others who created the disc golf here in Texas that we all know and love today. So, Jimbo not just lived the history. Jimbo remembers it. Jimbo documented it. Jimbo saved it. I have never known anyone in this state who has more of a collection of Austin and Texas disc golf history than Jimbo. He is a historian. He is an archivist. Much of what we can now look back and go, this is our beginnings. This is how we grew. This is why we are where we are today, is preserved because of people like Jimbo. And to this day, 70 plus, Jimbo shows up at work days. Jimbo spreads mulch. Jimbo improves our courses. Jimbo is out there working, promoting, helping our courses. And I don't know how many times I have seen Jimbo talk to a brand new player, some young person in their teens or 20s, talking about Austin disc golf history, giving him a Waterloo disc golf mini that he has that maybe he's even signed, is talking with him about the history of the tournament, the stamp, everything. He is out there not just promoting the sport, but promoting the history of the sport and giving a connection to times well gone by. It's just amazing. And to wrap up, I'll give this story. Charles Tipps, whom I mentioned earlier, is, again, the guy who brought disc golf to Austin. So Charles Tipps was the first Texan in history to get the designated world-class master. And this was a Frisbee designation by WAMO, multiple skills. So Charles was designated this from Tom Monroe, whom some of you may know as a revered figure in our sport. So at the Corpus Christi First Texas State's kind of overall, Charles Tipps was designated a world-class master. Later that same year, in 1976, Jimbo became the second Texan designated world-class master. They held the skills event at the main mall on the UT campus. And then they went over to Zilker Park and did distance. And just, again, Texas history personified. So, to me, I'm so proud and happy to present a true Austin disc golf legend and welcoming to the, very deservedly, to the Texas Disc Golf Hall of Fame, Jimbo.
Glad you all came out. I wanted to correct Gordon on the 1940th. 1937, there was a demonstration at the Belmont Hall during a halftime. All right. A man named Tex Robertson. He was an Olympian in Los Angeles, he did a demonstration there also. He started Camp Longhorn in a town north of Austin, and kids would come and play his Salo golf. He would play into a hula hoop, and you would earn points. This is my nomination for the next year. I'm proud of Waterloo. I've played every one, and it's the oldest in Texas, if not the country. I think Rochester, New York has an older event. We even beat in California, it seems. It's been fun in Austin, and I've met a lot of people. My classes at UT were exhilarating. I've met many people, handed out many free discs. We used to go out in the country to the old stores and buy up their stock because they weren't selling there, and give it to the informal classes at UT. Like 200 people is my estimate. Frisbee is a great thing. I'd like to honor one person, Park Pete. He represents all of us. He was always at the course. In the early days of Waterloo, we had a summer that transitioned into a fall, and we did 2 years. And we named the earlier one, the summer one, after Park Pete. He was always there. He was like the caretaker. And I want to deputize all of you to be the caretaker of the sport. There's many things you can do. You can move baskets. You can keep scores. You can clean up a course. You can volunteer for this and that. I hereby deputize all of you to take care of our sport. Who of you out here is 28 years old? The first Waterloo, I was 28 years old. So y'all got some moving to do. And I'll be there with you. And I appreciate the nomination and the induction. I've been inducted. Thank you.
Hey, give it up one more time for Jimbo and all of our incredible inductees this evening. I want to thank Live Oak Brewing Company for having us out here, and appreciate that, and the Capital of Texas Open as well for taking care of this. Thank you, Dyer, for the audio, visual, and lights in the eyes, and we appreciate it. We definitely want a group photo of all of the Hall of Famers, so please come on up. We all want to give Jimbo a big hug, squeeze him out. So if you're Texas Disc Golf Hall of Famers, come on up.
Here we go, Troy. Get that, Mr.
Troy.